Hello, please give me your name and explain what Woodford arrangement you invested into. Thank you.
Hi, Andy. My name is Paul King, and I invested into the Woodford Equity Income Class Z Accumulation Fund.
Thanks, Paul. That's very specific. And why is it that you've agreed to have this conversation with me, knowing that we're recording it and we're going to be putting it out on social media and so on?
Um, I've educated myself quite a lot in the last few weeks about this scandal and others like it, and I'm very disappointed about the situation. I'm very disappointed about the vote. I feel that the victims of this scandal have been misrepresented, mistreated, and I'm keen that that is brought to light in the public domain and in Parliament, and that something is done about this to set the record straight and stop it happening again.
Well, thank you very much. That's very clear indeed. Who is your MP, and would you be happy for us to send a link to the recording of this conversation to him or her?
Yes, certainly. So my MP is Sarah Olney, and she is Richmond Park.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So why Woodford? Why did you choose to invest in a Woodford fund?
Well, Woodford worked for Invesco, as I'm sure you're aware, for a lot of years before, and I had in fact invested in funds that he was the manager for there, and he was definitely regarded as a talented stock picker. His funds performed well, and I was very happy, and it wasn't a huge surprise to me when he stepped out and branched out and did his own thing. And I think generally the industry as a whole felt that there was, he was likely to perform well and succeed. Clearly, that's not the case. So, they do say past performance isn't a guarantee to future success, of course, but we're not talking about an investment loss here. We're talking about something rather different in this case, of course. So that's why I chose to put some money with the Woodford Fund.
Thanks, Paul. Did you use a platform? If so, which one?
Yes, I used Hargreaves Lansdown, who I was already using for my other investments at the time, and yeah, I invested in SIP and ISA.
Thanks, Paul. And when you invested, if at all, did you have an awareness of what the Financial Ombudsman Service was all about and the Financial Services Compensation Scheme? What was your understanding of your statutory protections?
Um, Well, I'm a retail investor, so I'm not an expert in financial services, but I'm aware of regulation. I'm aware of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme and the Ombudsman Scheme, and I'm aware of the Financial Conduct Authority. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
the FCA. I'm aware of what their functions are and what they do, and perhaps a little bit naively, I thought that their role was to protect uh, the end user, the consumer of these products, of which I am one, to prevent things going wrong, such as what's gone wrong in this case. Um, I'm learning that that's not the case currently. Even if it's their role, it's not what's happened.
Thank you. You'll be aware, of course, of the scheme of arrangements. What's
Hmm.
your understanding, Paul, of what you would get back in terms of pence in the pound from the scheme of arrangements if it were to be approved? And if you know, what do you think you would get back through the Financial Ombudsman Service if alternatively you had a successful Financial Ombudsman Service claim?
Okay, well, my losses are less than 85,000. So
Right.
um, under, uh, I mean, but that's not by chance either, by the way. One of the reasons that I invested no more than I did in the Woodford Fund is because I'm aware of the £85,000 limit. I'm aware of the terms of that. So I would get my full losses back under that arrangement. As it is, and bearing in mind it's been a number of years since it happened, Um, I've done a calculation based on the FTSE private investors income indices, which I've calculated my loss uses using that. I understand that's a good way of doing it for situations such as this. And under that, currently I've received under that assessment, I've currently received 39 pence back in the pound of losses. With this so-called scheme arrangement, that would increase to about 42 pence in the pound. So my losses would then be 58%.
Got it. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Very, very good to know. Thank you. So, in general terms, Paul, how has the scandal impacted you?
So my investments are roughly half and half between ISA and SIP. So I'm not at retirement age yet. So that's a future consideration, but no doubt that will come to bear in that time. But more immediately, I would have used that money to have um, borrowed less on a mortgage. So I'm now borrowing more than I wanted to. And I wasn't able to withdraw the money at the time that I wanted to do that. If I had have been able to do that, of course, then I might have been 23 to 25,000 pounds better off today than I am. Um, that's even more concerning to me today than it was a few years ago with the current economic climate, because when my mortgage renews, that will be another chunk of money that I'll potentially have to remortgage at a much higher rate.
Right, right. Well, again, thank you very much for explaining so clearly. You mentioned the FCA earlier. So, what are your thoughts about the way the FCA has handled all these issues?
Um, well, I'm not very impressed, to be perfectly honest. I work in the financial services industry, but I work in IT, so I'm not directly working on the sort of business side of it.
Yeah,
But because I work in financial services, I'm very aware and engaged in what's going on, and I'm aware of regulation. And in the environment I work in, regulation is expected, respected, and the intention of the company is to comply with regulation. It's clear that it's in the fabric of the company's culture to comply with regulation first and foremost.
yeah,
Um, what this scandal and others that I've been reading about lately has demonstrated clearly to me is that when there is an intention not to comply, or when there's accidental non-compliance, it doesn't really matter which, the regulation isn't doing its job. It didn't step in soon enough. It didn't do enough when it did step in. And here we are all left um, some years later with a big mess. I'm disappointed in that. To know that a lot, initially a number of people and then more and more people knew about this emerging situation before the fund was even gated, is very disappointing. I wonder why more action wasn't taken sooner to limit the damage, even if it had taken them some time to play out.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure there'll be many people who'll relate to the way that you just explained that. Thank you, Paul. 77p in the pound. So the FCA has talked about, referred to 77p in the pound, and the press has picked up on it. Do you have any thoughts about that phrase, 77p in the pound?
Um, it I don't know what they're talking about. It has no context. 77p in the pound of what? What you invested, what you lost, by whose calculation? Um, what does it mean? What does it mean? And why does it matter? Why should we be thinking about 77p in the pound? Why should we not be thinking about full recompense and compensation for our losses?
Well, thank you. The scheme of arrangements, any thoughts about that?
Well, along the same lines, really, whether it's 77p or by my calculations, in my situation, 42p, um, it, it doesn't matter. I don't know why we're discussing a scheme of arrangement. Why are we not discussing a scheme of compensation? You know, a scheme of arrangement sounds like two parties who are in a broad agreement about something, halving the difference to go forward together. It's like you're discussing the last sort of 250 when you're about to buy a second-hand car or something. This is not the situation here. I think we should be discussing a scheme of compensation, not a scheme of arrangement. I think it's a scheme of arrangement for the FCA. It's not a scheme of arrangement for the investors who are victims of this situation.
Well, thank you. The voting process and the voting outcome. Any comments on that?
Um, I mean, only to say what I said before, really. I don't know why we're voting on a scheme of arrangement. I don't think it should be going to a vote. I think what should be going to a vote if it needs to is a proposal of compensation. I think that the vote has been rigged is perhaps a strong word. I don't know, but for the FCA to come out in favour of something as toxic as a scheme of arrangement when none of the culpable people or organisations have yet been brought to account for this is absolutely disgraceful. And I'm not very happy about that.
Thank you, Paul. Final question for you, sir. Anything else you'd like to share? Thank you.
No, I don't think so.
In which
Covered it all.
case, Paul, may I just thank you for your time today? I'm very grateful to you setting aside some time to have this conversation and enabling us to record it and share it through social media and so on. Mr. Paul King, thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.